50 Shades of Grey is a series of books by E.L. James. They feature elements of sexual practices involving BDSM. Films based on the trilogy were later made. The story uses themes of being wanted by a handsome man, the feeling of protection with the thrill of risk involved. The two men in today's case, however, both took advantage of women's fantasies and used them to manipulate, control, and abuse their victims. They would try and use the 50 Shades trilogy to normalise their abusive behaviour. 31 years old, Ange Borda was originally from Mauritius, but now resided in Golby, France. People who knew Borda described him as a seducer, manipulative, a liar, and a stalker. Borda saw himself in a very different light. He thought he was a handsome man and a sexual beast. In his mind, he was the real-life Christian Grey, the mysterious billionaire businessman and BDSM enthusiast from the 50 Shades of Grey books by E.L. James. In the novels, Grey invites Anna Steele into his BDSM playroom and eventually introduces her to the world of sexual domination and submission. Borda was inspired by the 50 Shades of Grey films. He set out to find women to fulfill his fantasies, using various dating sites to lure potential victims to him. According to the dating sites, he worked in an electrical hardware store in Epinal, sometimes presenting himself as an assistant manager, commercial director, or a building administrator. Borda wrote in his dating profile, "I spank, no one resists me." Women who crossed paths with Borda said his actions were much more sinister than Grey's. One victim accused him of hitting them with a riding crop while they were placed on a spreader bar. Borda would later simply justify his actions by calling them games agreed upon between him and the women. The victims, however, say he set the rules for the encounters and didn't pay attention to the safeguards typically implemented by consenting adults engaging in BDSM. In one case, Borda was accused of telling the victim, "You can shove the code red up your arse, because I will do whatever I want." For 7 of the women, their erotic encounters with Borda became a nightmare, whether during a single night spent with him or during a longer relationship. One stated that she had to take 25 showers a day after being raped by Borda. Of the 7 women, only 3 would go on to pursue charges against their aggressor. For the victims, it was not just the physical aspects of the assaults that hurt them, but the indelible after effects. They saw their trust broken and their integrity violated in the name of perversion masked under the veneer of love. Ange Borda set up his own rules, defying morality and respect, throwing his female partners into a world of pain and despair. To add to his cruelty, Borda captured every moment of his reign of terror on film, under the cover of seduction and play. The boundaries between consent and constraint were erased, giving way to a toxic relationship where pleasure was mixed with fear. Borda was arrested in May 2019 after he himself filed a complaint about one of the numerous women with whom he had sexual relations. At the time, he told investigators that he had been practicing domination for about 2 years, using equipment such as sex toys, handcuffs, masks, whips, ropes and straps, all of which were found during a search of his home. In total, police interviewed 43 women who had relationships with Borda between 2015 and 2019, which ranged from a single night to several years. He was accused of rape, sexual touching, and violence against 3 of the women, accusations which he denied, claiming that his victims were jealous. Police would go on to recover 2,182 videos and 40,000 messages from Borda's phone during the investigation, which they would use in his trial. Borda was remanded in custody at the Nancy Maxville prison, where he confirmed to consistently deny any wrongdoing. At the Vosges Assize Court in Epinal, lawyers argued that he did not care about his partner's consent and that he wanted to punish them, even when they did not sign a submission contract with him. As was the case with some of the women investigators spoke to, he still went on to abuse the women. The testimonies at the trial showed Borda in his true light. One of his victims testified that she thought she was living in a relationship of consensual submission, but found herself confronted with acts of brutality and humiliation that she never imagined. After 15 days of the trial, which was held behind closed doors, a verdict was reached. Ange Border was found guilty of rape and acts of violence. He was sentenced to 13 years in prison. The defence said that they were satisfied with the verdict, as the defendant initially faced 18 years of criminal imprisonment, including 12 years of probation for 6 accusations of rape and acts of violence. They stated after the verdict, "Finally, the jurors partly followed us since they decided to acquit our client on 4 of these charges. Furthermore, there is no security penalty. However, we are considering appealing, because we know that it will be hard to make the jurors understand that the women filmed crying could still be consenting." The lawyer representing the victims said that it was a relief for her client. She stated, "The jurors recognised that she absolutely did not agree with these acts, nor responsible for what happened to her. She welcomes the judgment. She was not there in the spirit of revenge, but wanted us to put an end to these lies. It was indeed a rape that she had suffered." Our second case echoes that of Ange Border's crimes against women. It highlights how another man abuses victims in the guise of BDSM play. He would also go on to be known as the 50 Shades of Grey rapist. The man called himself Anthony LaRoche. He put up pictures of himself on dating sites as a hunky 37-year-old with a square jaw, muscular physique and designer stubble. However, he was in fact a short, balding 68-year-old called Jack Sion, who used a photo of a real male model from a 2009 ad campaign he found on Google. Several women responded to his profile on various dating sites. Each thought that she was embarking on a kinky sexual adventure after they responded to the handsome Anthony LaRoche, an architect in nearby Monaco, who looked like a model and promised a night right out of the 50 Shades of Grey. Sion would propose a blind date with the women at his flat in Nice, France. He refused to meet in public. Instead, the victims would go to his home on the Promenade des Anglais, a prestigious address on the French Riviera. The flat would be in complete darkness for the first date. One of his victims, 40-year-old Sylvie, who found Sion's profile on a website called Zeus, said, "He explained he wanted to play a game, like in 50 Shades of Grey, to make things more exciting." The evening rendezvous started out promising enough. Per instructions outlined in their email correspondence beforehand, Anthony, as the women thought he was called, would leave his apartment door ajar when his dates arrived. Sylvie said she was told to put on a blindfold and join the man in the bedroom. After she had sex with Sion, she turned on the light switch to discover the truth. Sylvie said, "He didn't correspond at all to the photo. I felt in total disgust." Another victim, Sophie, said the man had not wanted her to take the blindfold off after sex. She said she could tell from his figure in the dark that he did not have an athletic body. She said, "He was old, pot-bellied, with a big nose. I told him it wasn't you in the photo. He said, 'No, but I'd grown fond of you and was afraid to admit it. I left. I felt dirty. I insist on the word rape because I didn't give my consent to that man.'" Sophie also found out too late that her French Christian Grey was the old, short and balding Sion. Sophie said, "I told him I was downstairs. He opened the door for me, and so I went straight up." She remembers when pushing Jack Sion's door that she had a bad feeling. "When I got to his home, I had a little moment of hesitation when I saw the shadows of the furniture. I said to myself, for an interior designer, it's true that I didn't expect that as a decoration. Initially, it was him who would put the blindfold on me. He said to me, 'In the bathroom, there is a blindfold. You undress and then I'll come get you.' I was carried by his voice and by the impatience, the desire to make it all happen. I didn't see the unhealthy side behind it all, not at all. He laid me on the bed. He was the one who managed everything. At the beginning, we had to touch each other, discover each other, except that he didn't want me to touch him. He started to become a bit more aggressive in his voice, and that's when I realised something was wrong. I was scared of what might happen next. I thought to myself, if I refuse, or if you struggle, what can he do? What can happen? Out of fear, I let him do it." In 2014, one of the women filed a complaint, before 2 other complaints were also filed. Police arrested Sion in March 2015, placing him under investigation for rape by surprise. During questioning, he reportedly admitted to having found a photo of a male model as a way of maintaining his identity. When asked whether he had committed rape, Sion said, when she entered the bedroom naked, she was consenting. At that moment, she couldn't care less what I looked like. If she had asked just once if I was really the man in the photo, I would have told her the truth. When detectives searched his home, they found notebooks, hard drives, and computers filled with explicit images of previous conquests, over 200 women aged from 25 to 50 years old. It is believed that Sion could have been using the strategy of luring women with a false profile since at least 2009, which would suggest that he wasn't basing his crimes solely around 50 Shades of Grey. But it would have made it easier to get women to play his games. Police believe that Sion was in contact with 342 women around France, and around 24 of them visited his home between 2009 and 2015, but only 3 of them were prepared to speak out. The others were believed to be too embarrassed. One of the victim's lawyers, Mohamed Maktouf, said he had received a call from a 30-year-old Parisian woman who reported that Sion had abused her in the same way as the other victims in Paris when she was only 15 years old, but she'd always been too ashamed to come forward. Maktouf said his client was tied up, unable to move during Sion's assault on them. He went on to say that just because there wasn't any physical violence, it did not stop the act being rape. He said, "The law is clear. A partner's consent must be enlightened, whereas this man put in place a strategy that enabled him to have sexual relations that he would never have had if he had acted in the open." Sion's lawyer, Pumareda, disagreed and argued the women were bound with soft cords that could easily be detached, and because the women were not forced, his client was therefore innocent of rape. At his trial in Montpellier in October 21, Jacques Sion stated in his defence, "All those who came to my house wanted to experience something erotic, an encounter with a stranger. The mask is only of interest if you don't know the person. I found it more erotic. The dominant male, the more submissive woman, the ladies really liked it. Moreover, they love it." Sion was found guilty of rape by surprise and sentenced to 8 years in prison.